Recent cuts and trades have us wondering, are the Jags living on the edge, or are they really, really setting the edge? We'll tell you here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Exactly right. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where you can find all over the place. That's right. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it wherever you get your audio podcast. Make sure you check in there every single day and become an everyday here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, where do we begin? Let's start on the edge. That is what today's show is about, and we're going to try to deliver that. By the time we get to the third segment, I'm going to talk about two players that may affect the edge position, and they don't really primarily play edge. We'll get to that and tell you exactly who they are. Who's available on the free agency market? What veterans? There's a very, very familiar name out there. We'll see if they go in that direction. I don't necessarily think that's what they're going to do. And here's what we're going to start at. We're going to start right here in segment one. Are they living on the edge here in Jacksonville or at the edge position? In case you have not heard, Breland Speaks was cut over the weekend. He was a dude that people really, really thought played very, very well in training camp, that he was like one of those dudes that you really had to watch out for once they made the move and signed him a couple of weeks ago. Didn't happen, right? And then today, Trevis Gipson, who came into camp in most people's eyes as the primary backup to both Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. Well, Trevis Gipson was signed in free agency to a one-year, very team-friendly deal that only had $42,000 in guarantees. It was a $1.2 million deal. It's just odd when you see a player sign as a free agent and never play a down for him, and it doesn't have anything to do with injury, and then they actually trade him. Here's what I think happened. I think they said that it was going to be about competition, and that's exactly what they did, the Jaguars being they. And defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen and GM Trent Baalke, and of course, head coach Doug Peterson, they talked about competition. Like whatever our preconceived notions of this team didn't matter. What happened on the field is what absolutely did matter. We know the Jacksonville Jaguars have two very, very good edge rushers in Josh Hines-Allen as well as Trayvon Walker, right? They were the top duo in the league in terms of sack production last year. And I think the sky's the limit, and they're going to keep getting better because I believe the scheme of Ryan Nielsen is going to actually help them a lot more than the scheme that they were running before. That being said, we also know that fans around here have clamored for more depth with the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive ends and edge rushers and the ability to rush the pass because it's so important that they didn't want their laurels to be just resting their laurels on those two guys. Like injuries happen, guys get tired, guys get worn out. You need depth and you need rotation. Do they currently have that? Maybe. Maybe they know something that we don't. I'll tell you what this tells me as I peeked at the unofficial depth chart. Well, it was on Jaguars.com, so it's like officially unofficial because we know that depth chart is it's flowing, right? It's what do they call it? It's fluid. It's always changing. It's just a baseline for them. Nothing is set in stone until it's actually set in stone. But currently, there is no backup to Trayvon Walker. There's only a backup to Joshua Hines-Allen if you look at the depth chart, and I would suggest that you go to Jaguars.com, hit team, and when you get to team, just hit depth chart, boom, and it pops up. Josh Hines-Allen is listed at one starter, and Trayvon Walker is another. That is, I'm being Captain Obvious here, right? DJ Coleman, a second-year player out of Missouri, all 6'5", 260 pounds of him, and everybody likes DJ, right? That sounds like a sitcom, but everybody likes DJ Coleman. He's flashed. He's number 54. He's looked good. He has this length. That's a developmental player that they believe probably has a high upside. So now he is considered the backup to Joshua Hines-Allen. Joe Gaziano, who was not on your initial hard copy roster this year because he wasn't here, came in, and I thought he actually had a couple of plays that kind of caught my eye the other day. And then there's Miles Cole, the late round pick for the Jaguars, all 6'6", 280 some odd pounds of him, that looked the part in practice. And I always thought he was underdrafted. I had him like a fourth or fifth round grade on Miles Cole out of Texas Tech. I think these guys have impressed. And I think that that's 5 people that they are semi-comfortable with, 3 of them backing up those 2 starters. Well, really, I think they're really comfortable with DJ Coleman also because they've had a chance to work with him for a couple of years. And he was one of those kids. I got to tell you, if you ain't never seen him, man, he's tall, he's statuesque, he's got this big beard, and he looks the part. In the offseason, he was always around the facility. He was one of the dudes you saw going in and out of that building every single day, and you can probably park him and camp him right in that Parker Washington category, in that category with the second year players where you've seen so much improvement. Tank Bigsby. I just think that those guys had something to prove. They had something to prove, and one of the things that they had to prove was everybody talked about how bad of a draft it was. Well, they got busy, and they are the first example of this new philosophy that the Jaguars have adopted, where what they're going to do is draft and develop their own guys. They got to get their guys up to speed. They really, really have to. The word that they used was onboarding. They have to learn how to onboard better, get guys ready to play. Kudos to them, man, because even with Brenton Strange, the tight end that was taken in the second round from last year, and Christian Braswell, that draft is turning out to be very, very nice for Trent Baalke in this respect. They got Anton Harrison in the first round. We know that. I think he's going to be a superstar, right? I think that they looked at that draft for what it was. Look, these guys, this draft might not be full of dudes that you're going to have as starters from day one, but if they look at it and viewed it correctly, what they were saying was, it's a bunch of people that you can really, really develop, and they can turn into very, very solid depth for your team. And maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, those guys can play. And maybe that's what they're going with this defensive line, especially with when you think about DJ Coleman and you think about Miles Cole. I think that fits perfectly into the thought process. So we never really got a chance to see Trevis Gipson play. Some people say we did see Trevis Gipson play, and we don't mind them moving on from Trevis Gipson. If it's not just about development, if the Jaguars have something else brewing, or they are going to take a look-see at other players and other positions, or maybe them also making a trading for a veteran, or trading for someone out there that a team might be really, really loaded at, and they think that another player on their team can help them, maybe that's the way to go. There's another way to go. Who's available? Who are the unsigned free agents? Those veterans that I ain't going to say didn't want to do training camp, but every year you have these guys that they just sit out there. Jadeveon Clowney made a living off of it. He's like, man, I ain't coming in there until y'all finish all of that foolishness in the preseason games. And then you sign them the last week. I think Justin Houston did it a couple of years. And guys like that are productive because they're veterans. They understand workflow, and they're going to play limited snaps. And all they got to do is just be close to what they were. So we're going to talk in segment number 2 that if the Jaguars try to go the route of picking up a veteran, who could it be? I have a familiar name for you, and I'll bring that up here in just a second as we get to segment number 2 on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are actively searching for a new job or who are not searching for a new job. They might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users, they don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. It helped me out when I opened 2 barbershops. I was busy with contractors and I was busy with the state and all my regulations. And I forgot I actually need people in here to work. Well, LinkedIn took care of it for me and everything worked out all right. So here's what you do. You post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL, LOCKEDON NFL, to post your job for free. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free, and remember, terms and conditions apply. Segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Talking about the edge. Are they setting the edge or are they living on the edge? When you set the edge, you do your job and it's safe. When you live on the edge, that means anything could happen and you can fall over if you ain't got no harness or lanyard on, right? And the harness and lanyard are usually what they are is good players and depth. And I think most people today wake up thinking that the Jaguars' depth has been challenged. Before we get to who's available, I do want to say this. I think at this point, the benefit of the doubt from Ryan Nielsen has been earned. The benefit of the doubt of the new direction of developing players with Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke, something they should have been doing. But that's all right. We ain't going to talk about it because that's like telling somebody who lost 50 pounds, ooh, you used to be fat. We ain't going to do that. We're going to celebrate where we are today. We're going to talk about the fact that it appears that they are keeping to their word. And this was all about competition. And I'm all for that, because I like to believe things that people tell me when they say it. And so far, so good with them holding up their promise that it was going to be a competition with everybody. And we talked about them rotating a lot in preseason and in practice. Maybe this is what they saw on tape. They saw that Trevis Gipson and Breeland Speaks, that they were expendable, right? They were expendable. And they needed to move on, that they had 3 people. They have the 2 starters in Trayvon and, of course, Hines Allen. And now DJ Coleman, the homegrown kid, they gave him a shot. He worked his butt off, and now he's there. How many more do they need? I think they need 2 more reliable people at edge. One of them, the 5th guy, can be developmental, like Miles Cole. Here's where it gets tricky. There are some veterans available, right? How much will they cost? I don't know. Will it be worth it for the Jaguars to do it? Maybe. Will those guys be available to be situational pass rushers? And then now that they realize that their market isn't what they thought it was, they can say, okay, the Jaguars are a pretty good team. Maybe we can go there, make a couple $1 million a year, $2-3 million a year in limited snaps. And if they win, we look really good, and therefore we can get some money. I'll go through the list of those guys that I'm talking about as of today, and I got this from Sharp Football Analysis. Yannick Ngakoue is out there. I'm just putting it out there. If you talk about a dude that can run twists and get after the pass rusher, Ryan Nielsen has had guys similar to his stature before. Arnold Ebiketie up in Atlanta last year. So he's not the big stout guy that Trent Baalke has come to love so much. We know that. And he's not a dude that's going to really, really play the run consistently. But he is disruptive. And if you're talking about 20 snaps or 15 snaps a game, I think Yannick Ngakoue is the type of dude that can give you a big play in one of those snaps. It just comes down to the optics of, does he want to come back? I think at some point there was a little bit of conversation with him. In fact, I DM'd him last year when I thought that there was a chance. It was either last year or this year. I think it was this year in free agency. And he says, you never know. So he basically did not stiff arm me, if you will, about the fact that there's a chance that he would be available. Another player like that would be Charles Harris. Charles Harris, that's a name a lot of people know. Ironically, Charles Harris played at Missouri some years ago, but he played at Missouri just like DJ Coleman. Played a lot of football. I don't know the health condition of any of these players. Tyus Bowser is another name that comes up. Marquise Haynes, a little bit on the small side. If y'all remember Marquise from Ole Miss, very, very good, quick player. Shaq Lawson has been a little bit up and down. I don't know if he fits the length and the requirement, but he does at least have the experience. I like Kamoko Toure, a little bit bigger than Yannick. Kamoko played up in Indy for a while. I liked him when he came out in the draft. I really don't know what he has much of now. Rasheem Green, they had him and they let him go. Austin Bryant, I don't think so. And then Randy Gregory is heck no. I don't think they're going to do that either, because this team is built on chemistry and it's built on people who actually want to show up for work. So I'm more or less inclined to believe that if the Jaguars do anything, it's going to be maybe what Seattle just did with Jacksonville, and that is adding a player that's already on somebody else's team that's a part of their depth. That maybe one of the coaching staff, the members of the coaching staff, they have some familiarity with him, or it's a situation where, just much like Darnell Savage, they see a guy that wasn't available in free agency that they're very familiar with, and they had a book on him when he came out of college. And regardless of how, like Savage, regardless of how he was used in Green Bay, they're going to kind of use him differently. And so far, so good. And they're pleased with those results because of his athletic profile. So perhaps they have their eye on someone. Maybe it was someone they actually played against. They did play the Falcons this past week in free agency, and there are probably a lot of guys still on that roster that Ryan Nielsen knows very well that may be on the bubble in Atlanta, and Atlanta wants to do what Jacksonville just did with Seattle, and that is give up a late round pick. If all you're going to do is give up the late round pick you just got for Gipson, but you're going to get a dude that you're more familiar with, I'm all for it. I don't think that's too big of a deal. But so many people have been, the reason why this is really, really important, because for 3 years, people have been talking about edge depth. Almost 3 years. They kind of chilled out a little bit when Trayvon was drafted, but then they needed a little bit more in terms of depth heading into the 2023 season. The thing that Doug Peterson spoke of that was the number one priority was improving the pass rush, and they did it. They did it without adding anybody else. They did it by their own guys just playing better. So it's going to continue to be a question. It's going to continue to be something that people bring up as they head into the season, although I don't expect fans to know as much about DJ Coleman as some members of the media, but he has been there's a lot of people. I haven't spoken much on it because, quite frankly, I just don't speak on the same things that everybody else talks about. I don't do it to be evasive. I just, it just wasn't where my focus was. But I have heard the whispers. DJ Coleman, man, 54, DJ Coleman. I've heard his name from people that I trust that cover the team all camp. And I did observe with my own eyes that kid was there. He was Johnny on the spot, like I say, all the time being in practice. So I'm going to say that they have 3. Now I'm going to surprise you in segment number 3 and tell you how they actually have more than that. But it's something that you have to realize and think outside of the box. The people that they have play other positions. And I'm talking about Arik Armstead, and I'm talking about Mason Smith. I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean by that in segment number 3. And you need to listen, because in a lot of these fantasy leagues, y'all are taking defensive linemen, right? There you go. I think Trayvon's going to have a big year. And speaking of fantasy, thank you for making Locked On Jaguars your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to talk about the impact of Arik Armstead and the rookie Mason Smith and how that affects the edge position. We'll do that in just a second here in segment number 3 on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. Now, you've heard us and you've heard me talk about FanDuel a lot, right? Because it's America's #1 sports book and it deserves to be talked about. Well, we have something a little different for you, and I want you to listen very, very closely. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, all of them. After you watch the Jaguars, of course, if you don't go to the game and then you watch it on TV, then you can just pick and choose your favorite game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. All you got to do, man, is cost $5. That's it. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's right. FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. A quick recap before we put the icing on top of the cake here in segment number 3. Are the Jags living on the edge, or are they setting the edge? I think they're setting the edge, and they're living on the edge a little bit, but I think that's a relative term because I think everyone is living on the edge because that old I word that we don't talk about, the one that has guys writhing in pain and holding their limbs while they're on the field, that affects everybody across the board. There aren't very many teams that can lose players and still keep up the exact same continuity and production, especially when you're talking about guys like Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. But we ain't wishing nothing on that, and we ain't going to speak it too much into existence. The thing that the Jaguars do have, though, and this is a critical signing, and it's going to be something that if you really, really pay attention to it, it's something that you're very familiar with, and it's something that you have seen before as a Jaguar fan. They signed Arik Armstead, a pro's pro, a very good player from a very good defense who's had a very good career with a lot of success. Arik Armstead is like 6'7", like 295, 298 pounds. I don't know if anybody, let me see if they list him as the 300 pounder. I don't think they list Arik Armstead as a 300 pounder here. He's 6'7", 290. That's a tweener body, right? Kind of reminds you a little bit of a dude that was 6'8", 295 by the name of Calais Campbell. Pretty much same body type, same leadership qualities, same play style. If you go back and watch 49ers tape, that's where Arik Armstead played. Arik Armstead played a lot of snaps at the big end. I know they call it a 4-eye spot here in Jacksonville. A lot of snaps at big end. There's always this talk also about Trayvon switching up on certain downs just for certain matchups. You've seen it a little bit in the preseason. You've also seen the twist action where he starts outside, delays, makes a quick cut to the inside guy stunts to the outside, tries to push the guard out towards the tackle and give Trayvon with that athleticism a free run at the quarterback. I think Arik Armstead is going to spend some time at big end. And when Arik Armstead is at big end, you might see DJ Coleman on the other side if 41 and 44, that's Allen and Walker, are taking a break. You could see Trayvon, and especially if a team is having some success running the ball and you want to take either Trayvon or Josh out, you could see one of those at end, and you could see Arik Armstead at the other end. Now you say, well, Wig, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Yeah, that sounds good. Everything sounds good. All these plans sound good till somebody punches you in the mouth, right? That sounds good, but we don't necessarily trust Devon Hamilton, and we don't trust Roy Robertson Harris to hold the fort in the middle if all of that force is on the outside and you're moving Arik Armstead to the outside. But wait 1 second. I said there were 2 players that had an effect on this. The other one is rookie Mason Smith. All 6 foot, not taller. What is he? 6'5", 304 pounds. And he is every bit of 6'5", 304. And he flashed. He flashed in a mighty way. I'm going to give you an assessment of a player that he reminded me of in the preseason, because I'm going to tell you what he did. He made some plays. He flashed on passing downs. He flashed on running downs. Sometimes he didn't finish. Sometimes he missed the play, but he got there, right? And you think all he got to, I think the other day he came in and he was trying to make sure Tyler Heinicke, the quarterback for Atlanta, didn't get a pass off, and he lifted his hands up. And when he lifted his hands up, Heinicke pulled the old okey doke and he just ducked under him, right? It was like the old Ole, and it was like, where'd he go? He looked like a bull and a bullfighter, right? Well, that can be fixed as the game slows down, and he learns how to break down, and he learns how to hunker down, and he learns how to not overrun plays. It could be fixed. I said I was going to tell you somebody who, when he came out of college, the book on him, and this is the reason why he wasn't a first-round pick. He was a second-round pick. The book on him was that he did exactly what I just described when he was at Mississippi State. And if you go back, all you got to do is go back and watch the highlight tapes. You'll see it. He gets there, and man, the dude just got away from him. At some point in about year 2, ain't nobody else getting away from this dude. That's Chris Jones for Kansas City. You ask any scout, or you go watch it yourself. Go back and watch if you can find some Chris Jones draft tape. And one of the things you'll see him is he'll bust through that line the same way he's been busting through him his entire career. And it's a Hall of Fame career. In fact, he's in GOAT conversation. He's going to go down as one of the 3 or 4 best defensive tackles, and I don't think he's going to be 3 or 4 in the history of this game. One of the things that he did in college, and then he did a little bit of it his first year in Kansas City, he bust through the line, he'd flash, he'd make a play, he'd knock the dude off of his line, but sometimes he'd miss, he'd slip, he'd fall. You see Trayvon doing that sometimes. You did in the past. You saw him like almost make a play, and it's like, dang. He had a sack the other night. He could have had another one. The dude just got away from him, right? Those are the things that when the game slows down for great players, they start to live in their greatness and they start to exist in their purpose. So I'm not telling you that I think Mason Smith is going to be Chris Jones. What I am telling you is he was drafted in a similar spot, maybe a little bit later. I think Jones went in the 30s. And he had some of the same characteristics and traits when he came out of college. Flash, getting there, finishing. I think the hardest part of that scenario is the ability to get off that ball and put the offense at a disadvantage. That's the hardest part, and he has it already. With his development, with Jordan Jefferson, if they keep Ledbetter, I believe they have enough depth inside that will allow Arik Armstead to be the 3rd or 4th defensive end in those situations, especially with the way that Ryan Nielsen rotates. So sometimes these positions can be impacted by other spots and the versatility of the lineup. Thus, all of the mixing, matching, switching, different personnel groups that you have seen from Ryan Nielsen in his first year as Jaguars defensive coordinator. So there you go. Maybe if you look at it that way, you realize the Jaguars may have solved their own issues. Maybe the versatility and the addition of Mason Smith, the pick that a lot of people were like, man, we should have got a corner. We should have went in another direction. We should have got an offensive lineman. Now it comes. This is why you don't pass up big physical football players, because now it starts to make sense. Just get them, man, and put them where they're supposed to go and let it work itself out. Don't sit here and try to keep putting all of these square pegs in these holes just to fill squares. The teams that win games are the teams that have the best players, regardless of position. Well, except quarterback, but you know what I mean. I think I just put up a scenario where it makes me understand a little bit better what might be going on over there. What if they're going to do that? And what if they still go out and add a Yannick Ngakoue? What if they still do that? That would tell you that they think they're pretty good and they want to be great at that position. No wasted roster spots, and that is something that I am here for, and you should be too. All right, man, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep an eye on that. We're going to keep an eye on all of these cuts. We're going to try to make sense of the whole thing. We're going to make stuff up, but we're going to try to make sense of it. We're going to give you a bunch of different scenarios and see how this thing plays out over the next week or so. But until then, y'all hang on, buckle your seatbelt, because I think you're going to see a lot more movement and a lot more maneuvering by Trent Baalke, the Jacksonville Jaguars, this offseason. Now, if y'all were expecting me to be all upset and angry, when I said this move was a head scratcher, I put that on social media. It's very rare that you sign a free agent and then you trade him. I've seen people sign free agents and the guaranteed money isn't very much. And I'm talking about Trevis Gipson. They signed free agent and then it's not what we thought it was, and it's only a $42,000 guarantee, so we cut him. He never played a game here other than a preseason game, and he got traded. It's just that was a bit of a head scratcher for me. But as I sat and thought about it and looked at the depth chart and thought about all these scenarios, it makes a lot of sense. Good for them if competition won the day, because that's the only way this team is going to get better, and that's the only way this franchise is going to be lifted if they continue to do that. Make sure you tap in to Locked On Jaguars every single day, making it your first listen, and then make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. You can find the link to Locked On Fantasy Football in the descriptions, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I am Tony Wiggins. I will be here for you every single day, making it happen. You guys take care of each other. I will make sure I do the same. We'll see you here same time tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars.